eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on?
No matter how far you go into the dark, when you flip, you go exactly the same place to the light in our galaxy. Everything. Because everything is in balance. Everything is a polarity.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Let me pause this because I actually couldn't hear that. So I apologize, guys. The timing might have been off there. For some reason, that's why we're a little bit late as well, is because there's something wrong with my headphones right now. I couldn't hear the music. So what we're going to do, just before we get into the show, before we say hello to everyone, I just want to do a very quick test run here, just to make sure the show is going to work.
All right.
Okay, I could hear that. All right, there you go, little teaser. We're going to be talking Bashar. We're going to be looking at 2027 today, and all walks of life that are talking about 2027, because it's not just UFO people, it is the intelligence community, it is channelers, it is actors, it's all walks of life. A lot of people seem to think something is going to be happening in 2027 or thereabouts, right? It's not just 27, it's 26, 2030, sometime in the next few years, shit's going down, apparently. But how are we all, guys? Let me know. Can we get a roll call, please? Where are you? What time is it? Are we drinking coffee? Are we drinking beers? A lot of people in the chat already. Heather Harding, 2Spot, Poland Power, True, G-Bay, Rob. All the weirdos are here. Adam Howes, Jared, Brandon. These guys were in here early. Chris D, Serpenter. My God. And we had a member chime in early. I think that would have been early. Eric Cavallo, one of our newest weirdos. Give him some polarity loves and hearts. Welcome him to the weirdest and best club on the internet, I would say. And Sweaty Big Toe was in here at the very beginning. That was last night. Well, how are we all, guys? 6:35 in San Diego. Debs at the Northern Rivers in New South Wales. Shout out the Aussies that are tuning in. I know it's a bit of an awkward time for the Australians, but, you know, we got to share the love around, right? 7:30 in Colorado. Raphael, love the show. Josh, thank you, my man. Thank you for being here. Mark, you've got a funny weirdo story to share. Be my guest, mate. The floor is yours in the chat. 9:35 p.m. on the East Coast. 9:30 in North Carolina. Very good. I love seeing... I love when we've got people here from all over. All walks of life. All strains of weird. Monkey About's having a good time in Thailand. Tony in Sydney. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. 3:30 in the morning at Belgium. My man needs to go to bed. And 11 a.m. here in SA. It is 7 minutes past 11 in the southern part of Australia right now. And it's a little bit cold. I feel like I might even need to put a jumper on at some point, but you know, we're going to roll with the white tee because it's you know, it's trademark. It's trademarked by now. So we're going to roll with the white tee until I absolutely have to put a jumper on. 10:30 p.m. in Brazil. Eric, if you watched the video that I put up yesterday, I apologize that you had to listen to me try and speak Portuguese. I did my best, but I'm well aware of the fact that I would have embarrassed myself. I understand that. 8:30 p.m. in the middle of Tennessee. What's a jumper? Maybe that's an Australian term. A jumper is like a hoodie, a sweater, a sweatshirt. Sweatshirt with a hood. That's a jumper. If I ever need any help or hit you up, I will do, my man. And I definitely do need help. So I might have to take you up on that. All right. So 2027, guys. So today's show, basically, I've tried to put together as many pieces as I can, not just of people talking about 2027, which we do have a lot of. Today's show is going to be Clip City. Okay. This is just clips. But I've also pulled together a few other things to try and put together the pieces, right? To try and maybe together we can maybe come up with something. So today's probably going to be a pretty long show. You might have to pause it, come back and watch the rest later. But it's going to be a good one. You know, I think the whole 2027 stuff, as maybe scary as it might be for some people, it's also captivating at the same time, which is kind of weird, right? We're a little bit sick, us weirdos. We're obsessed with the apocalypse and things like that. But I think I think we'll kick off the show with a clip that I'm sure most of us have seen before, because this is sort of where it all started. Well, actually, I think we can all agree that the majority of this 2027 hype, at least at the levels that it is now, it originated from a podcast with Lou Elizondo where he said in 2022, go and get a hobby for 5 years and then, come talk to me. That is the quote that kind of set this all off. Strangely enough, I can't find it. Cannot find it. All I can find is people talking about the quote, but I can't find a clip of it. So there's that. But I don't think that's necessary. But this is a clip from John Ramirez, which again, I'm sure we've all seen. But I think it's a good way to set the tone for the show today. So let's check this out.
We're kind of preparing the U.S. population, at least, and by extension, the world population, into that reality that there is a presence here, and that we need to explain this presence. Because if they show up and we continue to do what we did before in previous decades, and they show up, there will be mass panic. But if you understand that these are real, and we have 5 years from 2022, or maybe now 4 years, if they come in 2027, for the U.S. government to prepare the people about what is up there. And in many ways, I think the word got out within the government that they're showing up in 2027, and we better be prepared. And if not, there's going to be a lot of explaining to do. And so I think that dialogue has happened within inside the government. And so
I just want to say before we watch the rest of this clip is, if you guys don't know, by the way, G's looking forward to 2027, so she doesn't have to pay her mortgage anymore. I feel that. I respect that. 5 years of knitting is going to pay off for Edward. I like it. If you guys don't know, so John Ramirez was a GS-15 in the intelligence community. Okay, in the CIA, that was his rank. Obviously, in the army, you have, private, corporal, lieutenant, colonel, general. In the intelligence community, the ranks work a little bit differently. And what I've seen is that John Ramirez at a GS-15 was like the equivalent to like a lieutenant general. Like this guy's rank in the intelligence community was super, super high. Like he's not just an ex-CIA agent that kind of was on the streets sort of thing. He was like high up. So that's something that, I mean, it already has quite a bit of weight to it, saying like what this guy's saying and where he comes from. But I think also understanding his rank adds a lot more to it.
Areas inside the government that we need to prepare. And that's why in 2017, that set a clock of 10 years. And why Lou Elizondo earlier in this year said, just find a hobby for 5 years. And, it'll all be out in 5 years. And he said that this year. So that's 2027. Huh. And I would say I've heard 2027 in a kind of an official capacity that I can't reveal. So I think I would say that people in the government are aware of something happening and that there's limited time, a few more years to prepare the people. And that's what's ramping up this acceleration from the previous 7 decades of not even acknowledging it to now we are acknowledging it at a faster and faster pace.
So, yes, Tommy Bird, Ramirez did get a little smack on the wrist for these kind of things, and we're going to be looking at that as well today. But what I think is important to point out, just before we move on with the show, is that, we all know that the CIA are famous for disinformation and misinformation. Like they infiltrate communities, topics, and niches and intentionally muddy the waters. And we know that, and we talk about that, right? But it's so weird how, like, at the same time, people like John Ramirez come out, say things like this, or we get these like declassified CIA documents telling us about Russian soldiers that have been turned to stone, or like remote viewing, right? And we just eat it up. We're just like, oh my God, Russian soldiers turned to stone. Oh my God, remote viewing. And then like the next day we might be like, yeah, CIA, they're full of disinformation. It's like, well, what? You're not even like, do you know what I'm saying? Like we eat this up, but in the same breath, we're like, yeah, they're disinformation. Like it's weird. And I'm not saying John Ramirez is disinformation and this is fake, But I just think it's something that like we should keep in the back of our mind, that like this is the agency that, you know, lies. So although it's interesting, like we need to be aware of that. Check out what he said a few weeks ago on Spaced Out Radio. Completely walked his statement back. Yes, we are going to be looking. I have the clip, and we're going to be looking at that as well a little bit later in the show. We're going to be looking at a bit more from Elizondo. But the reason why I just wanted to put that clip first is because it frames the show well. And I've always said about Elizondo, and especially To the Stars Academy, when they came out in 2017, it has always felt like a intentional slow rollout. And it does feel like, even before this whole 2027 thing, I feel like I may not have said 10 years, but I've definitely spoken about this seems like a slow, controlled dissemination of information, right? Because, and I'm a bit of a broken record with this, but Lou Elizondo left the government 2016. In 2017, when TTSA came out, he was talking about unknown threats, and, you know, the government couldn't work out what they are. Yet, we're now 7-8 years down the road from that, and he's testifying that we have reverse engineered craft. Lockheed Martin have the craft. We have bodies. It's like, well, bro, you haven't worked for the government for 7 years. Why didn't you just tell us all this back in 2017? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's obviously a controlled dissemination of information. But I will say that doesn't mean Lou Elizondo is like just a straight up disinfo agent. He has himself said that, you know, disclosure isn't his job. And I think we should sort of like respect that. And I'm not trying to defend Lou Elizondo here, by the way. I think, you know, if you're going to come out and show pictures of irrigation circles, you're going to cop it. That's just like, that's the way it is. But, you know, it doesn't make you an inherently evil, bad person either. I think we should try and stay a little bit balanced on that one. But anyway, let's keep moving, because it's not just the intelligence communities, right, that are talking about this. The next one we're going to be looking at is Leslie Keane. Now, Leslie Keane was basically instrumental working with Lou Elizondo and other people in breaking the famous Tic Tac, Gimbal, and Nimitz story in 2017 through the New York Times, right? She was one of the key authors of that. And this is a clip from, I think, a couple of years ago of her talking about not 2027 specifically, but the coming years.
Oh, definitely. It better happen before that. I don't think we're going to be in any shape in a decade to be doing very much of anything. So I'm not hopeful for the future direction that we're moving in it.
And the future direction, climate-wise, AI-wise?
Climate-wise and geopolitical-wise.
And sorry, I'll just say the reason why this is important, and I think this clip's worth having, is because she's, you know, she broke that article. Therefore, that's through the Pentagon with people like Lou Elizondo. So there's obviously a connection there. She obviously is speaking to people who are involved in these circles.
You know, the whole thing, I think, is going to kind of come. I think things are going to be pretty difficult starting in a few years. And from what I've been told by sources.
What does that mean? It's going to be difficult?
I can't say specifically. I don't know that much yet, and I can't really say, but just that a lot of what we take for granted now in life, I don't think is going to be, we're not going to have it. A lot of things we have now that makes our lives as wonderful as they are.
Like electricity?
I don't know. Just the access to all the things we have access to now that are dependent on the globalization, basically, which just aren't sustainable. A lot of the things we have aren't sustainable. The populations are growing, and I think the climate issues are major as well.
All right. She mentioned population. Let's just remember that. Okay, we're going to be coming back to that. We're still in the intro. Don't trust me. We got so much to go. Now, I just want to get to a few of your comments here. Jared asked Ty, guys, if you want to know the future and what's going on, you can ! Ask Ty in the chat and ask him a question. That is our resident non-human intelligence. And Jared asked him, will we see a non-human biological entity in 2027? And Ty says, yes, in this timeline, we will. So there you go. We have that channeled from the future. A lot of people giving Lou Elizondo shit. I know, I understand, I get it. And I think some of it's deserved, but I think some of it is maybe a little over the top. I'm still a bit on the fence about that one. It's tough. Rocky Mountain Skywatcher says, interdimensional beings are already right here. What humans can see and hear is so limited. Rocky, you're going to enjoy the end part of this show because that is exactly where we are heading with this one. Leslie Keane's a real bummer. She gets no party invitations. Yeah, look, based on that, she's not the kind of person I'd really want at my party either. But it's an interesting clip, right? Like I said, the connections that she has to be saying things like that, mentioning population control, which we're going to be getting into in this show. It's an interesting one and kind of scary. The fact that she's so just kind of like nonchalant about it. Like, yeah, look, I don't think we're going to have like, well, Kurt says electricity and she's just kind of like, yeah, something like that. It's like, wow, okay, that's kind of huge. My advice, guys, actually don't do it yet because otherwise they're going to sell out and I'm not going to be able to purchase any. But I think we should all buy like a few seeds of every vegetable and fruit. Okay, just to be safe. Doesn't hurt, right? But let me buy them first and then you guys can have them. Okay, we don't need another toilet paper situation here. Now, like I said, this isn't just UFO community. Okay, we're going to be hearing from Bashar. Now, I know Bashar is probably a little bit controversial depending on how you like to look at the phenomenon, but I like listening to Bashar. And, you know, and this is something that he says himself, and I'll echo it, that whether you believe that he's actually channeling an extraterrestrial or not, that doesn't really matter, because the things that he says about following your passion and following the things that excite you, I can vouch for that. Okay, those kind of following that as your life path is a good thing, but he is also very funny to watch. And let's just take a look.
All right, good day. The next transmission will play off of what we spoke of last time with regard to the 40-year cycles of humanity, but we will
Thanks for being here, Adam, brother. We'll see you soon.
Specifically focus and title this transmission 2027, the year everything changes. We will be talking more about the idea of the introduction of extraterrestrials to your society through open contact, which is happening in your year of 2027 as far as the probabilities are set now. And we will talk more about the idea of how those introductions will take place so that you can begin to prepare yourselves for understanding how your society will begin to blend with other societies in the cosmos and how that will impact your society and your abilities to transform your world into what you prefer it to be. So we will be talking about 2027, the year everything changes.
So, first of all, I'm going to be selling all seeds at 10x the cost price in my Discord. So if you need seeds, just come and let me know. Sean's hoarding barbecue sauce because humans taste like pork. I like it. Jai, you said, I don't believe he's channeling anything other than his own weird mind. And, you know, to that, I would say you could be right. It could be. But then it's like, you know, what are your thoughts? Where do your thoughts come from? Because I feel like the more you get in tune with yourself and your own mind, you start to realize that like your own thoughts kind of come from a place that feels non-local. So what does that mean? What is that? Where is that? I'm not going to try and speculate on it. I'm just going to pose it as more of a rhetorical question for you. But yeah, maybe he is channeling his own mind, but what is that? Like, where is this coming from? One of the most compelling things to me about Bashar, and you know, I won't hide or deny the fact that when he starts a channel, like it's very odd and it's hilarious the way he kind of like pops into his Bashar and he's like, "Hello, good day." It's funny and very weird, but at the same time, I've watched quite a bit of Bashar, and people ask him in live settings, live face-to-face, people ask him very deep and difficult questions. And I've never seen him like pause, stutter, like say anything wrong. He's just like, bam. And his answers are long, deep, and insightful. Like it's very crazy. It's very crazy. But yeah, an example. Okay, we're just going through a few examples here of how this 2027 stuff is coming from kind of all walks of life. The mind is crazy powerful. We have no idea what we can do. Christine, I 100% agree with you. I think we are capable of so much more. And the reason why we aren't achieving that is because of things that are intentionally put in front of us to distract us through the TV, through social media, conflict, fear, sports, marketing, consumerism, all of that shit. If you can step away from that shit, you realize that there is so much more going on up here. All right, next one. This stuff is even getting talked about in Hollywood.
Well, currently,
Russell Crowe.
I'm reading a lot of stuff that says, full contact in 2027. And there's all these people that used to work for NASA or all these other organizations out there talking about how our history as a species is really simply a series of genetic experiments to get us to where we are now. When you look around, there's a lot of proof that says that might actually be a thing. Anyway, that's what I'm...
There you go. Big Rusty Crowe. He's on board with the 2027 madness. It is everywhere. Yeah. And I think AI and technology has a lot to do with it. I'm really looking forward to Diana Pasulka's next book, because in the video that I did where we kind of talked about techno-terrestrial and the merge between human and AI, essentially, transhumanism, metahuman is the term that was used in the video. We really followed Diana Pasulka's work in that book, because she's talked about how the people at like the cutting edge of AI in Silicon Valley not only see AI and humans merging as like some kind of savior, like AI is our savior, but that they believe that it is sort of like us becoming them or them becoming us via technology. That like, and look, I don't want to get too off track here, but it feels like at some point in our history, technology was ceded to us, and then we've now accelerated as a society in crazy ways, more than like 50 times the amount we have in the last like thousands of years, just in the last like 50. And it feels, and now we're getting all this talk about like aliens and UFOs. I don't know. It kind of feels like this merge has something to do with a non-human intelligence, because at the end of the day, that's what AI is. AI is a non-human intelligence that we created. And it makes me wonder, like, are we an intelligence that someone else created? And now we're creating an intelligence to make things easier for us. And then once the intelligence we create gets smart enough, it might start creating its own intelligences to do things for them. And it's just as above, so below. It goes all the way up and all the way down, and we're just somewhere in the middle, ignorant, thinking that we're special. Who started the 2027 rumor? I think it kind of started from Lou Elizondo, at least in the modern context and the modern hype of it all. David Bowie interview parts were good in that one. I know, Sarah, that was a great little nugget. I was really happy when I found that one. That David Bowie interview, I think from 1998 or 99, is just fascinating. That guy, I mean, what a guy. Like, so ahead of the times. Just a brilliant, artistic, creative, alternative thinker. That's my kind of guy. But do you want that, or would you rather be pure human? Oh, that's such an interesting question, Tamara. And it's tough, right? Because and that's what Diana talks about, is that, like, a long time ago, humans lived alongside with Neanderthals, and we, for some reason, maybe we were genetically manipulated. I don't know, maybe. For some reason, we just got a lot smarter, a lot more capable, and once when we lived alongside with this other species, we just became so dominant and so much more intelligent that this other species like just literally died off. So then it's like, well, if humans begin to merge with AI and become a metahuman or transhumanism, I totally understand what you're saying by not wanting to do that, because I feel that on like a visceral level. But at the same time, it's like, well, if everyone around you merges with AI, and now everyone around you can, like, they can lift heavier than you, they can run faster than you, they're just so much smarter than you. They can learn. Not only are they smarter than you, they can learn just by looking at things, because the AI can just see and process the data. Like, they are just literally almost another species now. So, okay, you want to stay human. I get it, but you know, you're basically now the equivalent of a large toddler. You're a large toddler. You're useless in modern society because you don't have the same capabilities as anyone around you. You're basically like disabled. You're literally disabled. So, and I'm not trying to advocate for it. I'm just trying to explain the reality of what that would mean. If everyone becomes a metahuman where, you know, information is just soaked up in an instant, you're basically a giant disabled baby. Why did Neanderthals disappear? I think because humans were genetically modified and just became a dominant species. But anyway, we're half an hour in. That's the intro of the show done. Welcome, welcome. I hope you're comfortable. I hope you've got your coffee because we've just finished the intro. What we're going to look at now, and this is going to set the premise for the rest of the show, is a famous call that some of you have probably heard before, but even if you have, it's a good way to frame up what we're doing here. So radio host Art Bell hosted the famous call-in show, talkback show, Coast to Coast AM. And he, in 1997, put out the call for any employees or ex-employees of Area 51 to call in. And basically said, spill the beans, what's going on there, you know? And I don't think he really expected much to come from it, or at least he definitely didn't expect what we're about to look at here. So let's take a listen to this. There's a few key points that we're going to pick up on here. Here we go. It's coming. I swear it's coming. Hang on. Here we go. Sorry about that.
Online, you're on the air. Hello.
Hello, Art.
Yes.
Hi. I don't have a whole lot of time.
Well, look, let's begin by finding out whether you're using this line properly or not.
Area 51.
Yeah, that's right. Were you an employee or are you now?
A former employee.
Former employee.
I was let go on a medical discharge about a week ago, and I've kind of been running across the country. Oh man, I don't know where to start. They're gonna they'll triangulate on this position really soon.
So you can't spend a lot of time on the phone. So give us something quick.
Okay. Okay. What we're thinking of as aliens are they're extra-dimensional beings that an earlier precursor of the space program made contact with. They are not what they claim to be. They have infiltrated a lot of aspects of the military establishment, particularly the Area 51. The disasters that are coming, the military, the government knows about them, and there's a lot of safe areas in this world that they could begin moving the population to now, Art.
But they're not doing anything.
They are not. They want the major population centers wiped out so that the few that are left will be more easily controllable.
Discharge.
So at this point, not only did the call cut out, but the entire radio station cut off. And I believe Art Bell's come out and said that had never ever happened before to that extent, and it's never happened since. Now, a few people here are saying that this was debunked a long time ago. Well, first of all, Christina, if you have a link to that, I'd love to see it. Chuck it in our Discord. But I want to say this, right? Not only do a lot of things in that call, and remember, this is 1997, a lot of things in that call line up perfectly. And that's why I played it, because we're going to be taking a lot of points from that call, and we're going to be looking about how it's all coming to power, right? First of all, yeah, you can feel this. I think that to me sounded real, okay? It sounded real in my opinion. Secondly, with the debunk stuff, again, you guys have to realize that the intelligence community, which would be who is responsible for debunking this kind of stuff, they, like, you can debunk things. You can create fake debunks is what I'm getting at, okay? And it would absolutely be in their interest to do that. Now, I don't want this is not going to turn into another MH370 thing. I think the debunks that we see for MH370 videos are classic examples of fake debunks. That's just my opinion. We don't need to go any further than that. But you can create those debunks and make it look convincing. Okay. I don't want to go into it any more than that. That's just my opinion. But I just want you to know that you can make convincing debunks of things that are not actually fake. And that would literally be what the intelligence community does. I mean, it's in the Majestic 12 documents, right? We read through them the other day. It says that they will literally gaslight and make people look like a fraud in public. That's like their mission statement, right? Okay, so we just be aware of that. Just because you see something's debunked, still use your critical thinking. Who's debunking it? Who benefits from that being debunked? Or who benefits from it not being debunked? Like, these are the things that we need to think about, right? But let's keep moving. There are things from that I want to highlight. So here we go. These are the key points we're going to be looking at today. 1997 Art Bell caller talks about extra-dimensional beings. An earlier space program had made contact with them. They've now infiltrated the military and Area 51, and that the government knows about disasters that are coming and that they are essentially okay with it because it's going to work in their favor for population control. Okay, they're the points we're going to be looking at, coming back to and from throughout this show today. You listen to the declassified document read through. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. We actually touched on it in the video yesterday as well with, what was it? The living biological entities that are recovered. They allegedly get taken to OPNAC BBS-01. And I just cannot find anything on the internet for what OPNAC BBS-01 is. I've tried and I've tried. Maybe we need some super sleuths out there to help us out. All right, guys, if you're enjoying the live stream so far, we got a lot more to go. Please give the video a like if you haven't yet, because it really helps the channel grow and it helps get the stream out there as well. And if you've seen it on X as well, giving it a repost helps out. And I'll give you a kiss in the afterlife. All right, next one. Let's move on. Let's go with earlier space program made contact. Okay, that's where we're going to go first. So let's take a look at this clip that was recently on Jesse Michaels.
May be the best model we have for the UFO story.
It's not just the atomic connection. They're generically attracted to the tip of the spear as far as tech development.
That's at the heart of it.
Yeah.
Harold's daughter Pippa would know that. She was special assistant to President Bush and on his National Economic Council. It's now public knowledge through Hal Puthoff that George W. Bush contemplated UFO disclosure with his national security advisor, Stephen Hadley. As Pippa relayed to me, a lot of these high-level disclosure discussions revolved around one particular book, a Chinese science fiction novel called The Three-Body Problem, which became mandatory reading among many high-level national security advisors in the United States.
Then to fast forward.
The Three-Body Problem is essentially required reading for high-level people in the national security. Okay, now I'm sure there's probably a few people here who haven't seen the show or read the books. I've got a little clip here. I had to put a bit of, there's no talking in this clip, so it doesn't really matter, but there's a few subtitles. I put over some copyright-free music just in case. Okay, we don't want to get in trouble here. I'm not trying to alert the authorities on us. We're going to play this clip and we'll talk about it. So this is essentially like one of, I guess, or the main character. In maybe the 60s or 70s, I think it is. And she is working for the Chinese space program. And they make contact with an extraterrestrial species through these systems that you can see here. Something that can't be fixed. And maybe it traces back, maybe elements of it trace back to occultism. Probably even before the Nazis were messing with it. But I also think that there's probably been something living here or alongside us or interacting with us for far longer than, you know, the Nazis. 100%, obviously. So that's that one, right? What did we just look at there? Where's our sheet? So that's the earlier space program, okay? We're now going to look at, I think we'll go to population control, right? This is a wild clip. Now, if any of you guys are OGs, you would have seen this one. This is from a very, very old episode. And we are going to be looking at a short clip from this video here. Now, the reason why I've got the photo up here to show you guys is because I want you to see, first of all, this video of Bill Ryan. You can find it on YouTube. I've showed it, a lot of it, in an older video of mine. But if you just look here, look at when this is posted. 13 years ago. Okay, 13 years ago, this video was posted. And so what is that? Like 2012-ish? But he's talking about something that happened in 2005. Yes, good old Project Camelot. And obviously the title has been adjusted. The title's been changed. But because in this video that was posted in 2012 or 2011-ish, he talks about how there are plans for a bioweapon to be unleashed on China. Okay, and he specifically says in this video there are plans for China to catch a cold, and that this was part of a bigger plan to initiate a third world war, which would begin by instigating a nuclear reaction from Iran. Okay, so like Israel and Iran would instigate a war that would go nuclear, and then that would essentially be like the beginning of World War III, and it all comes down to population control. It's all to do with population control. It is a very fascinating video, and the only reason I just wanted to show you this first is because it was posted. He's saying it 13 years ago that China will catch a cold. That's the verbatim quote. So it's crazy, right? But this is just a short clip from that I want to show you guys.
That the people who are calling the shots in the world, you can call them the Illuminati, the controllers, the cabal, whatever name you have for them, they believe that there is going to be what he called a geophysical event, a major geophysical event. He says that the best information that he's got is that the insiders believe that this is going to happen, or they are concerned that this is going to happen. And many of you watching this will know that this isn't a completely crazy idea. There have been trillions of dollars that have been spent on deep underground bases for some reason which we don't know why it is. You'll know about the seed bank in Svalbard. This is in the public domain, where all the seeds of all the plants and all the crops in the world have been buried deep inside a granite vault in northern Norway. There are many precautions being taken as if something might happen that could really threaten some of these valuable resources, including the seed banks of the world. Now, if there is going to be a geophysical event as they believe, this is because it seems to be preserved Illuminati inside knowledge, whether it's true or not, that there are repeated cyclical geophysical events about every 11,500 years. Information about what really happened to Atlantis was very probably in the Great Library of Alexandria that burnt down a couple of thousand years ago.
So guys, like I said, I will be selling all seeds at a 10x premium in Discord. Make sure you come and join our Discord below until stocks last. No, but seriously, just to try and tie what I was talking about together there. So yes, Bill Ryan is talking about a geophysical event, just like the Area 51 caller was talking about, that there is going to be events that are going to wipe out the population and that they are aware of it. And what Bill Ryan is saying there is basically confirming that. But the whole World War III thing is that the bioweapons on China, the wars, are essentially all the major superpowers in the world jostling to be in the best position for when this reset happens, for whenever this big event happens, by, trying to harm China's economy or causing war in this part of the world or whatever, is to make sure that, I guess, the West, or whatever you want to call it, the Five Eyes maybe, are dominating when this cataclysm happens. So when we come out the other side, they're kind of ready to lead the new world order. And that's exactly what he talks about in that video. It's absolutely fascinating. Another thing that he speaks a lot about in it is the Georgia Guidestones, which is, we did touch on it the other day, but I tried not to go into it too deep because I wanted to talk about it in this video. So some of you may not know what the Georgia Guidestones are, and we're just going to pop over here and take a look at it. Actually, or should we look at that first? No, we'll stick with what we're doing. We'll do Guidestones and then we'll look at that. I was actually meant to look at that earlier. My bad. All right, Georgia Guidestones. So these are like 19 feet tall. Okay, that's nearly 6 meters for the Australians playing at home. 6 meters tall, 237,000 pounds or 107,000 kilograms. Okay, these things are huge and heavy, and they were, I nearly said the E word. If you were here on the stream the other day, you'll know what I'm talking about, but no, they were constructed in 1979 by just a man using a pseudonym. Okay, they're essentially created anonymously by Robert C. Christian. And what's crazy about these things is that they have 12 languages on them. Okay, so a lot of modern languages, but as you can see here, also ancient languages like, yes, G has hit the E word. Modern languages as well. Sorry, ancient languages like Babylonian cuneiform, Egyptian hieroglyphs, ancient Greek. It's very strange, right? So, but what's weird about these things is what they actually say. So I think it does say here. Here we go. So these are essentially like the 10 commandments for the new world. That's essentially what they are. And this is what they say. Maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. Guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. Unite humanity with a living new language. Rule, passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason. Protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. Let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. Avoid petty laws and useless officials. Balance personal rights with social duties. Prize truth, beauty, love, seeking harmony with the infinite. Be not a cancer on the earth. Leave room for nature. Leave room for nature. Now, I think we could probably all agree that that actually sounds like a good idea. All of those things, it's kind of like, that's kind of like all the things we got wrong this time. Like this time, this turn at life, we kind of messed a few of those things up, I think, and I think we'd probably all agree on that as well. So these feel like righting the wrongs, ways that we could, when you do something and you learn from it, you're like, okay, next time I do this, I'm going to do this and this better. That is essentially what this is. However, the reason why these things are so creepy and strange is not only the fact that they were constructed anonymously, but it's really this one, isn't it? Maintain humanity under 500 million. I think we're currently at like 8 billion. Okay, a little bit over, just a little bit over the threshold. So what does that mean? What does this mean? Okay, let these Guidestones Let these be guidestones to an age of reason. And there you go. Babylonian cuneiform, classical Greek, Sanskrit, and the Egyptian hieroglyphs are all on there as well. Very, very strange. And interestingly, these things no longer exist because they were destroyed in 2022 during COVID. I believe someone like, I don't want to say a bomb because that sounds a bit extreme, but I think there was some kind of explosive damage to them. And because of that, they weren't fully destroyed, but they were then like a hazard, like a health and safety hazard. So they got removed. But yeah, that's the Georgia Guidestones. So if you guys didn't know about that, very strange, very weird and interesting. Whoops.
Who are calling the shots in the world. You can call them the Illuminati,
Come on, Bill.
the control.
Get off the stage, Bill. Sorry. Bill's getting on now. He'd be probably pushing 60. Sometimes he forgets that he's actually already spoke. What I think we'll do next, because I did want to bring this in earlier. I wanted to put this in at the start of the show, so we may as well do it while we're here. Where did we go? Where did we go? Okay, let's go. Let's check this out, because my mouse has disappeared. There it is. So this is, again, we've just had a new pope come in, right? We've just had Pope Leo, the first American pope, come in. And this is a prophecy about the popes, and it talks about the last pope. So let's check this out.
Popes.
Oh boy.
This book was found in the Vatican archives. Predicted every single pope from in 1143 all the way to our current pope. But the scary thing is, after Pope Francis, the last one, it just says Judgment Day.
Oh gosh.
It literally ends after Pope Francis?
Yes. The creepiest thing that I saw inside St. Paul's Basilica, bordering the whole inner sanctuary, is every single pope. But what's weird is that there's only a certain amount of markers to where you can put a picture. There's one left after Pope Francis. They have
Pope
always
Leo
said that once that last slot is filled, it will be the end of the world. What he predicted, the time it took to go from the first pope that he wrote about, halfway mark, was 422 years. And he's saying from the middle one to the end, another 422 years will be the end of the world. If you do 422 years from the middle pope, which was 1585, that year is 2027.
Dang!
It's even weirder. Pope John the 23rd, and he said that the end of the world would happen 2,000 years plus Christ's life. So that adds up to 2027 as well.
Now, I think there is a little bit of debate there on, the age of Christ and all that kind of stuff. So look, we can debate about that. But what's interesting is the fact that there was one blank canvas left to fill with the Pope after Pope Francis, and that's now been filled. And that is meant to be the last Pope before the end of the world. Now, just quickly as well, sorry, before we had a $2 super chat come in from Zap Aru. Operational Air Command, Backup Bunker Shelter. Thank you for the $2, my brother. With this, that Pope prophecy is interesting. It's a little bit creepy. Could be nothing, could be something. I don't know. But what is also weird is another thing that I'm sure you guys are probably familiar with, or have maybe heard about, is this thing called The Last President. Okay, The Last President. This is a book written in, I believe, the late 1800s, and it is about someone called Baron Trump, who becomes the last president, and his mentor is Donald Trump. Okay, now, look, I haven't read the book, but it's weird, right? When you look at the state of the world, when you look at the prophecy of the Pope and all the 2027 stuff and how long Trump's term will last, we're not going to read into this too much. I know just the name Trump seems to bother people, but it's worth including because, we're talking about the end of the world here, and this is it's a weird one. And also, I guess while we're talking about books in the future, Werner von Braun, the Saturn V, the Nazi, that guy, he wrote a book called Mission to Mars, and a man named Elon was trying to basically resettle the population on Mars, and he wrote that book in the 50s. So yeah, what the hell is going on? I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. I'm just showing you how weird the world is that we live in. All right, let's keep moving. Let's talk about the end of the world more, different ways to experience it. Love this story. Can't find the books though. All you need to Google is The Last President. And the person who wrote it, his name is Ingersoll Lockwood. I believe that's correct. Chris Bledsoe. Yep. Kim, we got a whole section on Chris coming towards the end of the show. Yes, AJ from the Y-Files was on Joe Rogan today. I haven't had a chance to listen to it, but I'm very excited to check that one out. No religions are evil, only the zealous supporters. Yeah, there's fanatics in all walks of life. You can be fanatic about anything, okay, and it can be quite disruptive. That's it, Mark. Last President PDF, and I'm sure you'll be able to find yourself a copy. Now, we just talked about, let's get our sheet up because we're moving through these points. We just talked about geophysical events, population control. Let's go to this one here now. Infiltrated the military and Area 51. Now, this is a juicy one. The first person we're going to hear from, we're probably going to get a few memes in the chat here from the weirdos, because this is someone I've been talking about on the channel for a long time, saying I'm going to make a video about him. I'm going to make a video about him, and I never have. But I will. I will. But he's going to be showing up on the channel for the first time, and that is a short clip from Phil Schneider. So let's check out this speech from Phil Schneider, who was if you don't know who he was a geologist, and he basically excavated deep underground. So these deep underground military bases that are everywhere through the United States, which is kind of like generally accepted now. He was the guy that dug them out. Okay. He, using like explosives and all kind of techniques, dug them out so the military could build these bunkers. And his claims are that one day he did that and he blew into a space that was meant to be just dirt, but it was an empty cavern, and a battle with non-human intelligences ensued. I know, it's crazy. He has some scars and things to show for it. And in every speech that he did, he would say, I'm not suicidal. I don't want to end my life. He would say all these things. And then somehow he was found in his apartment with his own catheter wrapped around his neck. So yeah, make of that what you will. If a guy was just losing his mind talking about aliens that weren't real, is that really a problem? Or maybe you need to keep him quiet for a reason. I don't know. You guys make your mind up. But here is him. Here is Phil talking about a potential agreement with non-human intelligence.
Later on, about 6-8 years later, 1954, during the Eisenhower administration, led to a interesting treaty called the Greada 1954 Treaty. It was the Alien-Human Treaty. And supposedly the aliens had come in and exchanged technology, and they'd want to take an occasional human being and a few head of cows, and accurate books were supposedly to be kept, and all this kind of stuff. And of course, eventually all that broke down, and aliens are notorious for being liars, even greater liars than so-called, in quote, we humans are. So alien treaties are often just not even the pieces of paper they're written on. They're just really kind of worthless.
So, when this would have come out in the 90s, I first found Phil Schneider in 2013. And that's what took me a whole set of levels down the rabbit hole for the first time, right? Even in 2013, I was like, man, this is crazy. But, I always judge people on I don't judge them necessarily on what they're saying. I judge them on how they're saying it. And some people might think this is silly, but it's a feeling thing. I think you can look at people and you can see in their eyes, their body language, and you can generally get a vibe on if someone's being just absolutely truthful. And it's not necessarily you can tell if it's truth or lies, but you can sometimes tell just when something doesn't feel right, when something feels off. And I don't get that with him personally. And he's got a whole bunch of speeches, which you can find. And he tells the same story. He's got these crazy injuries on his hand from what happened. And I believe him. And I know it's crazy to think that he's talking about a deal that was made with a non-human intelligence. But, John Blitch confirms that. John Blitch, who was on News Nation earlier in the year, he was actually in his interview with Matt Ford, where he said, and I've showed it on the channel many times, that's why I don't have the clip up, but John Blitch said on Matt Ford's show that Commander Robert Dean, who he saw as a senior figure, told him that the American military didn't have a choice. They were going to do these abductions anyway, so they entered into some kind of agreement, which was like an exchange of technology for the non-human intelligence to do whatever it is they wanted to do, and that the American government would be present to make sure they weren't doing anything they weren't supposed to. Now, again, yes, that's very crazy, but we do have many, many experiences saying that they have seen humans in military uniform when they're having these abductions. Now, I've never had an experience like that, so I can't comment either way, but it's data, right? There's many people independently saying that out there, and these aren't people from the intelligence community, they're regular people. And then you've got Commander Robert Dean, who we're about to look at. Basically, well, I mean, let's just let him say it. So I think the one we're going to be looking at first is this one.
And at that time, I was given a cosmic top secret clearance, which was and still is the highest level of security access that NATO has. When I was assigned to the war room, I learned that a study had been initiated in 1961, and everybody was talking about it. They were gossiping about it. And the subject was UFOs, and that intrigued me a bit. When that study was concluded in 1964 and it was published, and I was still working in the war room at that time, I had access to this document. I had a chance to read it. And having been exposed to it, I must tell you honestly that my life has never, ever quite been the same. Because I read first-hand reports, verifiable NATO military material that indicated that the UFOs were not only real, but they represented something far beyond anything I had ever imagined before. When the study was concluded in '64, they concluded that there were 4 different groups apparently coming and visiting us. Out of those 4 different groups, one group looked exactly like we do, so much so that they could sit beside you in a restaurant or in an airplane or in a theater, and you'd never know. And that particular point bothered the military guys a lot. Point being that some of these people from somewhere could be walking up and down the corridors of SHAPE headquarters, or they could be walking up and down the corridors of the Pentagon. One day at lunch, a lieutenant colonel made the remark, he says, Jesus, did you realize they could even be in the White House?
Super interesting guy. I love listening to Robert Dean, and we've got some more clips coming from him. But I agree, guys. Like, again, we're coming back to using your own discernment, your own intuition. And just because you're hearing something that sounds so radical or like does not compart with your experience in the world doesn't mean it's not true. And when I look at him and the way he speaks and his body language and his tone, I feel like he is telling the truth. I really do feel like he's telling the truth. And it looks like a lot of you guys feel the same. And I feel like there towards the end of that clip, he's maybe alluding to something that he feels is true, but maybe doesn't know for sure. Otherwise, why would he bring that up? He's talking about people in the White House who may be non-human, but they look just like us. And, you know, I've often thought that, like, there does seem to be a genuine push for disclosure, right? A genuine push that seems to just get stonewalled somewhere in Congress. I mean, Jeremy Corbell is raging that, you know, people in Congress are lying and that there are agents in there that are trying to stop it. Now, I'm not trying to say those people are like not human, but it seems like whatever it is in these places has a lot of power and doesn't want it to come out. And I feel like maybe this non-human intelligence that is interacting with us requires like anonymity for some reason, or maybe not anonymity, but like if we know what's going on, then whatever's going on isn't going to work anymore. perhaps. That's kind of the realm I'm thinking. That's not fully fleshed out, but that's kind of, you know, where I'm feeling at the moment. It's difficult to put into words. It is. It's a mind-blowing topic. We're talking about things and dealing with things that are just beyond our day-to-day life. Robert Dean, the OG whistleblower, fantastic guy. Absolutely love listening to him. And like I said, we've got more clips of him. Actually, we'll jump straight into another clip because we're gonna keep rolling with this. So this is following on from Phil Schneider talking about an agreement that was struck in the 50s. Another famous incident that happened in the 50s is the Holloman Air Force Base landing, which is where a craft was allegedly filmed, by the way, and there are people that say they've seen it, where a craft was filmed landing at Holloman Air Force Base and 3 beings stepped out. And if any of you guys can correct me if I'm wrong here, but my recollection of this story is that the beings had a bluish tint to their skin, probably quite similar to what we've heard from Jason Sands, which is interesting. But their dress, what they were wearing, looked very Egyptian. They looked Egyptian. And I think maybe there was even hieroglyphs on the craft, which is obviously something we hear a lot about, right? So maybe I'm pulling that from another story, but they were definitely Egyptian looking. I remember that clear as day. And I'm going to use that as a little teaser and let you ponder on where I might be going with that, because in either the next video or very soon, I want to start talking about breakaway civilization and what that could mean and the levels to it. Because I think that Holloman Air Force Base could be the nugget of the breakaway civilization. But that's another video. So let's check this video out again of Bob Dean.
They knew back then that there were 4 different groups, and one looked like us. They knew the little grays were around. They knew there was one group of grays that were larger, that had large noses, like the ones that apparently landed at Holloman Air Force Base. And Air Force friends of mine told me that that's no joke. That really did happen, and they do have it on film. We are supposed to be sovereign. We run the government. We make the decisions. We select our leaders. They are answerable to us. Well, they've forgotten that. Most of the people in the intelligence business were never elected. No one decided to give them these jobs. Most of them were appointed. Most of them have been there for years and years and years. You have got to take the responsibility yourselves to inform yourselves, to become knowledgeable about what's happening, because when the events that I'm telling you about start to happen more and more and more, you better be ready for it.
There we go. When these start happening more and more, you better be ready for it. That speech was, I think, from 1993. And, you know, there's so much to get into there. But Pole and Power, you've just made a good point. The Brit who hacked the NASA server found the list of people and names of the ships that are currently out on Galactic Ops. So that was Gary McKinnon. And we've covered him in a video as well, quite earlier on in the channel. Gary McKinnon's story is super interesting. And I think actually someone earlier in the chat mentioned Laura Eisenhower. And again, I've spoken about her before. I find it so interesting. She is the granddaughter of Dwight Eisenhower, okay, the last 5-star general to be president, the one who allegedly went into the agreement with these non-human intelligence, and kind of the rest is history from that point. It's crazy that Laura Eisenhower, the granddaughter of President Eisenhower, not only totally believes that, by the way, not only does she totally agree and believe that her grandfather, the president, entered into an agreement with non-human intelligence, but that there are secret space programs. Like, she is on the level, I don't want to say like Corey Good, David Wilcock, because I feel like, you know, people have their own assessments and feelings of those people, and I don't want to like mix them together. But those are the kind of beliefs that she holds, that like secret space program, we are actually interplanetary, interstellar almost. And again, this could be, you know, with breakaway civilization. There is a breakaway civilization here. Bases on the moon, bases on Mars. I'm not saying that. I'm talking about the people who believe that. And guys, and just remember, Haim Eshed, Brigadier General of Israel's military, ran their space program for 30 years. Just think about those credentials. Like, he's not just a captain or a general. Like, he's He's a brigadier general. He's a leader of the space program for 30 years. And he went on the record and said the United States have bases on Mars. They have bases on the moon. They know about extraterrestrials, and they want to, his words were that Trump wanted to reveal it, but he got pulled back. So, and then again, you've got the granddaughter of a former president saying, yes, that's all true, but it gets ignored. Like, why? That doesn't seem like something to me that should get ignored. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but it just doesn't seem like it. The fact that it gets ignored is sus. Do you guys agree with that? You feel like that's sus? I think that is sus. And what else did we get from that? Okay, Bob Dean talked about the intelligence agencies. Like, who are these people? No one voted them in. They got appointed, and they just kind of remained there. No one has the power to remove them, and you see how they outlast presidents. And we're going to be looking at a clip from Lou Elizondo a little bit later, where he talks about how, that's probably the reason why presidents don't get briefed on this stuff, because presidents are kind of seen as a temporary employee. Okay, the intelligence agency that no one appointed has been there and will always be there, and they know all the deep dark secrets and control them. And the president kind of comes in, and they're gone in a couple of years, but the intelligence agency remains. So you can understand from that point of view why it would seem like a burden or a sort of a pointless exercise to brief someone who is then going to be burdened with this knowledge, who you then need to control. So let's look at someone else talking about the intelligence agency. So this is going to be, this is Diana Pasulka. We've looked at this clip before, but this is a nice little touch on the intelligence agencies that we just looked at.
Yes, that these were beings that were higher on the kind of like this hierarchy of beings, which, not in terms of dignity of life, but in terms of like just advanced civilization, advanced communities, these kinds of things. So Tyler prepared this for students in several of my classes. And I shared this in some of the classes that I teach. So his taxonomy is that there's a God, right? And then there are these angels. And then there are off-planet intelligences, ETs, right? And then below that, there are what he calls certain factions, not all, certain factions within the intelligence community, and then humans. Okay, so that's I think I got it right. That's his taxonomy, his pyramid of being.
Why does he put the intelligence community above, like in between?
It's a great question, right? That is one of the most interesting clips. So she's talking about Tim Taylor there, which is, the notorious, elusive and very interesting dragon operator from NASA. Kat Simpson says, did Tyler lead Diana the wrong way? So Tyler is a pseudonym for Tim Taylor. Yeah, I think it's a great point, Kat, and it's something that I think we definitely need to consider. I don't think that's the way we want to go with it. Well, I don't want to make your mind up, but I don't know. I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced either way. I just, you know me. I like to assess and observe and just kind of stay a little bit neutral until we kind of have a bit more data. But he told Diana that factions of the intelligence agency sit above humans. So what does that mean? Now, and as well, in saying this, just because someone might be a CIA operative or a disinformation agent, I feel like, there could be still human. It doesn't mean they're always going to lie. Doesn't mean they're always going to lie. So there could still be truth in what they're saying. That's important to remember as well. And that's why this topic can get so murky. You fence sitter? Not always. Not always. I'll give you my opinions when I feel confident enough to do it. But I don't feel like it's not always necessary. So what else is interesting is Tim Taylor's influence on Chris Bledsoe, and people say that is like another whole like Rick Doty, Benowitz situation there. Maybe we're going to look at some Chris clips quite soon. But what is interesting though, aside from the hierarchy of beings, is that recently Diana has been on record saying that she no longer talks to Tyler, or maybe even she can't talk to Tyler. And I think she doesn't even talk to Chris anymore. And she says because of what happened. And there's no further information on that. So something happened with those guys, and she has sort of distanced herself from them. And again, when we're talking about intuition, when we're talking about, you know, vibes, I guess, when I listen to Diana Pasulka, I get pure vibes from her. She seems like such an honest, genuinely curious person that if she started to feel or realize that there was something nefarious going on, that she would cut it off. That's the vibe I get from her. And I feel like maybe that's what has happened, that she has sort of started to realize that maybe some people weren't as honest as they said they were, or something like that. I would love to get Diana Pasulka on the channel one day. I know she's releasing a new book this year, which is about the merge of AI and humans, and like what it means, where it comes from. You know, is this non-human intelligence, the AI, actually a form of non-human intelligence in the way that we talk about it today? So I'm really looking forward to that book. And maybe when she's doing the classic podcast book tour, maybe we'll be lucky enough to get her on. Who knows? That's a while away. We'll see, but I'll do my best because I would love to talk to her. So we've talked about infiltration, them looking like us, and population control, space programs. What do we have left on this list here? We're going to look at extra dimensional beings. Okay, we're going right back to the top of this list because this is, I think, this is, I think, where things are potentially heading. So let's go back. We got another one from Bob Dean here. Here we go.
But that was only part of the story. The shape conclusions in 64 was that there were 4 groups that we knew of. They were apparently interplanetary. Some very likely were interstellar. They even concluded that some of them could be intergalactic. When I retired in 1976, many of our military people knew at that point that we were not simply dealing with visitations from people from other planets or star systems. They had concluded by 76 that some of these visitors very well might be multidimensional in their source.
There you go. So this term, multidimensional, is not new. It's been around for a while. I think the problem with it, though, is that it's sort of unclear, right? I feel like a lot of people don't fully grasp what it means. And I'm not even saying I do. I mean, how can we truly perceive something that exists beyond our dimension, right? It's like, you know, when you use the examples of like something that is one-dimensional can't perceive 2D and how 2D couldn't perceive 3D. I'm sure we've seen those sort of visual explainers. It's quite clear, and we would have to accept the fact that if something is operating in a higher dimension, we're just physically not going to be able to perceive it. Maybe mentally we can, but at least it's going to be quite mind-bending to try and take something like that in for us. We've got oh, we're actually missing a clip. Okay, I'm gonna play this clip instead, and I'm gonna try and find the other one while it plays.
Officers that came to me, many of which I knew almost my whole career, that confided in me they were a part of a program. They named the program. I've never heard of it. And they told me, based on their oral testimony, and they provided me documents and other proof, that there was, in fact, a program that the UAP task force was not read into.
You are alleging that the US government has been concealing the existence on this planet of alien life.
I would couch it as non-human intelligence, you know, NHI, like we would like to say in our language.
Why do you say that? Why do you say NHI?
I don't want to necessarily denote origin. I don't think we have all the data to say, oh, they're coming from a certain location, and I couch it as somebody who studied physics where maybe they're coming from a different physical dimension as described in quantum mechanics. We know there's extra dimensions due to high energy particle collisions, etc. And there's a theoretical framework to explain that. Yeah.
Just let me cut to the quick though. You're saying there is an intelligent species engaging with this planet?
Yes, that's potentially extraterrestrial. Yeah.
I speak for everybody.
So there you go, Grush in the famous interview, and I got to say, guys, Grush seems to me like one of the good guys. Like, you know, Grush popped up, said what he had to say, and he kind of went MIA for a while. And from what I understand, that's because he, you know, you gotta wonder why. So, like, from what I understand, Grush faced a lot of backlash, like a lot of people and things making his life extremely difficult for doing what he did. So it makes you wonder, what about these other people that are talking regularly on podcasts and interviews and on shows that seem to come from similar parts of life, similar career backgrounds? They seem to be saying kind of similar things, but they don't seem to be getting the same kind of reprisal that David Grush did. I don't know. I feel like that's a bit strange, probably something worth remembering. But again, intuition, I feel like Grush is one of the good guys. I actually only recently watched his episode on Yes Theory. So when he did, when he had his hearing, he also did an episode on Yes Theory with those guys because they went to the hearing, and it's really good. If you haven't checked it out, you should definitely take a look at that, because it's just a cool, intimate look at David Grush and his life and just as a person. And again, just for me, confirms that he's one of the good guys for sure. Grush got strung along. They used him and then hold him. I don't know about that. I think Grush did a multi-year long investigation into, these secret programs. He came out, showed what he found. And, I don't know if they hold him. I think it's just like, he's shown you what he found and that's it. He doesn't, if he kept talking, he'd just be repeating himself. And, I don't think he's out. He's not trying to sell books. He's not trying to get on the podcast circuits. He's just like, hey, I worked at the NRO. I found this, and it is what it is. As a simulation subscriber, I see what we call extra dimensions as different simulations on the same server. That's interesting, Sean. I think we were talking in Discord the other day. A few of us were talking about how, there is some crazy stuff coming out through News Nation and through some like alternative media about, agreements with non-human intelligences, craft crashing into planes, but none of it gets on the mainstream news. And it almost feels like, and the people who eat up mainstream news and don't read and don't look into this kind of stuff, literally it's like we're living in parallel realities. Like Matthew Brown said, it's like and it's like you can choose which one you want to live in by simply where you focus your intention. Because I've talked about this in a video. Our five senses are like a limited framework of like where we want to focus on reality. Like there's so many different parts of reality, but we can only focus on what our five senses allow at any given time, right? That's why if you're like deep into like sports and shit, you probably don't have the time to be like looking at like aliens and UFOs and stuff like this. If you're deep into aliens and UFOs, you probably don't have time to be looking at, I don't know, politics or maths or whatever, you know what I mean? You can only take in so much is what I'm saying. And it's like, well, what reality do you want to live in? Like, do you want to focus up here and look at, be a sports guy and memorize the stats of all your favorite players, and now you walk around wearing your sports team's hat like a kind of a, I don't know. Hey, look, you do what you want to do, okay? It's up to you. So I'm not gonna comment on that. But the point is, I think we choose what kind of reality we want to live in by where we focus our intention. And I'll just add one last thing to that before we move on, is the things we focus our intention on as well, I think can play into like our frequency of like, are we living a happy life, or are we living a life of, jealousy, resentment, anger, fear, conflict? And I feel like certain things where we place that attention can pull us either up or down on that spectrum. Now, I found the clip I was looking for. This is the last one on multi-dimensional, and it might come in loud, so apologies. I'll try and fix it quickly.
So what have you seen?
I've seen
all
Okay,
kinds
cool,
of craft, everything from cigar shapes, wedge shapes, just you name it, saucers.
So you've seen the
orbs.
classic flying saucer?
Oh, yeah, many times.
So what do you think, sir? Do you think that these are non-human entities, or do you think that the American government's maybe got something burrowed in a hill here somewhere?
I think the American government is very, very interested in the technology. And what we're starting to see, what the evidence leads to, and what we came up with in 2006 was the idea that these things all involve dimensional travel.
Really?
And
There it is.
That's very interesting to me, because that's what David Grush told me, the intelligence officer who spoke to me in 2023. And he said that he thinks perhaps it's interdimensional. So it's interesting to hear you say that.
Yeah, we came to that conclusion on our own because we started looking at the evidence. The evidence of Bigfoot tracks that went for a mile and disappeared in trackable ground, almost like it was jerked up into the air.
So what do you think is happening? If there is something like cryptid creatures, Bigfoots, I mean, this is the stuff of fairy tales, paranormal fantasy. You're saying it's real and there might be an interdimensional explanation.
We have had natives that told us that these things, as they were watching, disappeared, just faded out. We've had UFOs come and just pop into existence.
So there you go. Native American Navajo Ranger. He's talking about, once again, interdimensional. And again, he's from the area of the United States where you've got Skinwalker Ranch, Bradshaw Ranch, places that are just known for being an area where people claim the veil is thin, where it seems like things seem to come in and out of our reality. Had a 4-month member super chat from Coley Ray. Please click the like button. We have 450 people on the live stream, but only 150 likes. Guys, if you're enjoying this, if you're enjoying filling your mind with all of this fear of 2027, please give the video a like. It does help the channel out and helps us grow as well. And come join our Discord if you haven't already. You can keep this fear-mongering conversation going on. And as well, I'll be selling seeds, okay? The seeds that you're going to need when the global reset happens, I'll be selling them at a premium in the Discord. You can come and buy them in there. That's a joke, by the way. I'm not actually selling seeds to you guys. I'm not scalping seeds, okay? We can all have some seeds for free. Now, at this point, you're probably thinking, okay, interdimensional infiltrated the government. Like, what does this actually have to do with 2027? And I get that. We're rounding the bend now. We're rounding the bend. We're coming towards the end of the show. We're going to start wrapping things up a little bit. So before we do, I've just got that clip on John Ramirez talking about things that he got a slap on the wrist for talking about. So we heard from John at the start of the show talking about 2027. That as a high-ranking GS-15 intelligence officer, which is like a lieutenant colonel or general, like a super high position, he got a smack on the wrist for talking 2027. So check this out.
Let me share this with you. I've been pushed back by CIA for 3 things. And one of them was 2027. One of them was 2027. The other was the Nazi influence over the UFO research by CIA. That's one
interesting.
Of them. Don't talk about the Nazis. The second is don't talk about military abductions at all because criminal activities have occurred. And you don't want to get embroiled in criminal activities, talking about criminal activities. Don't get involved in that. So Nazis, Mill Labs, and 2027. They're the 3 topics that CIA came back and said, we're very uncomfortable with this.
There you go. And I think the big one there that doesn't get talked about as much in this clip is military abductions. Like he's referring to what we talked about before, which was that John Blitch asked Robert Dean, who we heard from, what's going on? Is this stuff real? And Robert Dean said, yes, but we had no choice. And that the agreements were that the United States would be present during these abductions to make sure that the non-human intelligence stuck to the agreement. Okay, I understand how okay, do you understand how wild it is for me to say that on a YouTube live stream? But this isn't my opinion. I'm just repeating the things that are out there. Okay, that's the crazy part, is that this isn't just some random guy on YouTube saying this. These are the things we're hearing from people who were in charge of nuclear weapons, at high levels of the intelligence agency and the military. Like, it's crazy. And again, parallel realities, not even on the mainstream news. People who don't look at this stuff know nothing about it and consequently don't care about it. So what is that? Is that they are literally living in a different world in their own head? Because, I mean, reality is just what we perceive, right? It's wild. It is wild. So we got a couple of clips here from, we got 3 Chris Bledsoe clips. We're at an hour and a half. Okay, we'll start with this one, and we may have to cut one. So I want to try and keep this at about 2 hours or less, but we'll see how we go. So we got this clip from Chris Bledsoe on Sean Ryan.
I think we're living in the worst possible times right now, that if we don't make some changes, there's going to be some major disasters about to happen. And it's man-made. It's not solar flare. It's not any of that. It's a dark force. Because she told me, well, I'll tell you what she told me. This is what I put in writing, part of it. She said, there are people in power. I put this in writing in 2012. She said, there are people in power. And I'm not going to say where she focused my thoughts on that, but there's script in the book of Revelation to bring about Armageddon and the end of the world. They're doing it intentionally, and that's what she told me. And that's the very thing the main meat of the whole message I sent to these generals. So it makes sense, right?
Who is they?
I don't know who they are. I think they're Satanists. I think they're people that worship the dark force, that don't care for humanity and human life. And in fact, they're the total opposite of, they worship the devil. Or I don't know if there is a devil. I think it's a very dark force that is living full of dark entities that feed on you parasitically, like there'd be non-physical. They shape shift. They take your mind over. They make you do crazy things. They deceive you, make you kill somebody, go crazy. Where the angelic world are the physical beings. They can come in here and light. These beings are made of light.
There you go. Chris Bledsoe talking about, and the interesting point in that, I mean, there's a lot in that to talk about. By the way, we've got a poll up, guys. I'm just interested to see what people think. Chris Bledsoe, is he legit or is he being used? Is he being psyoped? Is he being, I don't want to say useful idiot, because I don't think he's an idiot, but, is he, have the CIA seen an opportunity in Chris Bledsoe to use him to help steer the narrative? So legit or psyop, get in the chat. We'll let that poll sit for a little while. But the interesting part of that clip that I wanted to talk about is the fact that he says people at high ends of the government are trying to script the end of the world. They're trying to bring about an Armageddon. So I don't know if he's referring to like the Collins elite, which are, allegedly a section, not a recognized section of the government, but they're a group of various people who are in high levels of government and military, who are heavily religious and look at all of this through a very religious lens. I don't know if that's who he's referring to, but that is a group that gets talked about, and that they're trying to push for an Armageddon. They're trying to bring about the end times. Now, the first thing I think of when I hear that is like why? Could you not? I'm halfway through a course right now. Could you just wait? Maybe like why? Why would anyone do that? Well, if I'm, sorry, by the way, we had a 1 month chat come in. Your content makes my brain tremble. Thank you, Mr. Canny. I appreciate that, mate. The only reason I can think of is why. Is that, again, let's go back to the 3-body problem. Let's go back to maybe a door was opened and it's unleashed something on the world, maybe through another dimension or occult rituals. Jack Parsons, Aleister Crowley, who knows? Maybe something was unleashed on the world that has caught us in this web of like constant conflict and fear, and attacking each other because for some reason they feed on that or they benefit from that or whatever. These are just ideas. And that these people who are essentially religious fanatics, we can maybe say fanatics, maybe that's a bit over the top, but they're very religious and they have a lot of power. Maybe this is like the Hail Mary. This is the halfway shot on the buzzer to try and get rid of whatever this is. They're trying to, what's the right word? They're trying to stimulate or bring about the return of Jesus Christ or whatever you want to call it. They're trying to simulate this apocalypse scenario as a buzzer beater, last second, half-court shot to try and get rid of whatever has come in through maybe another dimension or is manipulating the world and keeping us in a constant state of fear. That's totally just my theory based on that. Let me know what you guys think. You could say I'm just absolutely off the rails, and that's okay. I'll accept that. But what do you guys think? I think it's a decent theory at the very least. $5 super chat from JL Lammy. Hi Josh, love your work. Have you looked into how a lady appeared to George Washington while he was writing the Constitution? I've heard about that. I have heard about that. Have I looked into it? Not really, not deep enough, but I have heard that this lady figure seems to be a thing. It seems to be a thing throughout time that a lot of people have encountered. So it's very interesting. This all definitely didn't start with Chris Bledsoe or Lou Elizondo or anything like that. Let's check out the next clip. Now, this one is when he really specified the 2026 thing on Sean Ryan. And I've got my headphones on, so I'm still listening. I'm still here, but I have to run to the toilet. So we're going to play this clip and I'll be back.
I was inside a bubble, something that was solid that I could stand on, but I couldn't see the walls, but I could touch them. But I could see everything in every direction. And there were always 3 figures behind me that were shadowy, and they were narrating what I was seeing. And I saw North America from way up high. I saw the whole United States, and then I was taken to Egypt, and I saw the pyramids, and this Hathor's temple. I saw that, the Sphinx facing to the east. And then the lady comes back. The following year, after all this, this was in 2013 is when I really got that message from her, because that's when I was asked by the Pentagon, by 2 Air Force generals, to put it in writing what she told me. And I did. And this was on the request from NASA, a friend at NASA. So he come and got it and hand-delivered it to these generals. And she told me that, she said that when the star of Regulus, she called it a red star. When you look at it, it looks blue. But she said when Regulus is red on the horizon, in front of the gaze of the Sphinx, before daylight. So in other words, when it's sitting right on top of the horizon, before the sun comes up, that moment would mark a change in humanity's knowledge. And she showed me other things. War, us bombing Iran, us bombing Syria. And in them days, none of that had happened.
Remember, that's what Bill Ryan talked about.
So I put all that on this piece of paper. And now I've had so many write me back, oh my God, you see they just bombed Iran, or Iran just bombed us. You were right the whole time. And I did that in 2012. And so what they did was I gave them the date of 2026 because they took that celestial event and ran it through these machines that showed that exact alignment will happen in 2026 at Easter.
What will happen?
The star will, the alignment she told me about, that the star of Regulus would be on the horizon in front of the Sphinx. At that moment, there'd be a new knowledge. Well, I had no idea if this was even possible, you know.
And it's interesting that a few of you guys have already picked up on this in the chat. Kim James, Pope Leo. That's actually something that I thought about as well, that this whole Regulus star thing is actually in the constellation Leo. This is meant to be the last pope, according to the prophecy we looked at earlier. He's taken the name Leo. Look, we could be connecting dots here that don't actually connect, but it's interesting, right?
But these astronomers run it through the machines, and it comes out that that star is going to come up on the horizon in Easter of 2026. And from that point forward, they started remote viewing the state. Government did. And now you hear it all over TV. 2026, that's the big date. 2027, that year, something's going to happen. Armageddon, you hear it all over. You know, you hear it on TV. If you study, like, I've heard even, well, I won't say names, but
please do.
Well, you know Lou Elizondo, right? Lou's mentioned that date. A lot of people have.
Easter 2026.
Well, the year 2026. I gave him the specific time. And it was with Robert Grant that I told him about this alignment and all. And then he's like, oh my God. He's been looking for this ruby, this little ruby you have to find and place it between the paws of the Sphinx to make this event that he knows is going to happen in 2026. I said, Robert, it's not a ruby, it's the star of Regulus. He looks like, he's like, oh my God, it's the king star. So what's going to happen, I don't know. But I think it's possible that's the return of
Christ.
Yeah.
So yes, dude is so chill. Again, going on intuition, going on feels, I definitely believe that Chris Bledsoe is an honest man. I don't get the vibe that he's trying to tell lies. The only thing that does concern me, and I think, 30% of you, 28% of you felt this way in the poll, is that, not that I think Chris is dumb or anything like that, but he seems so kind, and that's everybody's report on him. Anyone that's met him, and I think you can just get that vibe from him, right? That he seems like a very soft-natured, kind person. And the only thing that I worry about is that kind people often get taken advantage of, or they can be easy to take advantage of. Now, I'm not saying that he is, because I don't know him. I've never met him. But when I see someone with that kind of soft nature, I worry that they can they can be manipulated. They can be taken advantage of. And again, I'm not saying that's the case, but it is like the little bit that I'm like, oh, is he, he's been through trauma. He's had a hard life. When people are vulnerable like that and they find something like these orbs, or when a vulnerable person who's going through a hard time has an experience like what he's experienced, I think he is just a prime target for the CIA to come in like they did and twist it and manipulate it the way they want it to go. Now, his side of the story is that they were just so interested in the phenomenon and the lady and all that. And maybe that is true. I hope that's true. But I also think at that point, when he was at the lowest of lows and he started having all these experiences and the CIA swooped in, he was in a prime vulnerable position for something like that to happen to him. Trauma gives you psionic abilities. 100%. I think a lot of people who are, not just awake, but maybe people who have experience with like ESP and things like that, a lot of the time have had like rough childhoods, so they've had to grow up very quickly, or have just had a lot of trauma in their life. It's kind of forced them to dissociate from the like general consensus programming of reality, just as a form of escape, right? Just as a form of escape. Just quickly, I'll throw this in here while we were talking. Just found an old slide of mine, which talks about, okay, hang on. This is an old slide of mine from a video from many videos where I've talked about the connection between Egypt that, you know, Chris Bledsoe was talking about there and modern America, because it is just so fascinating, right? I mean, you can't tell me that the people who are in these positions don't take this stuff seriously. You've got the Egyptian god of wisdom carved onto the doors of Congress. So that carving of Thoth there is on the door in Congress. That's obviously in a giant Egyptian obelisk. There's one at the Vatican too. You've got the pyramids on the dollar bill. You've got all of these areas in the Grand Canyon that are prohibited to go to that have names like the Tower of Set, the Temple of Horus, and Tower of Ra. It's crazy. And not to mention the NRO patches where David Grush worked. Okay, that's where David Grush did his investigations at these places that you can see here. It's very, very interesting. I think the word you're grasping for is gullible. I don't know about that. I don't know if I would say it's gullible. I do think vulnerable is the right word. It's vulnerable because when you're in a position where you're low and low, you are desperate for something to help you, for something to pick you up, something to get you out of this situation. And when you have this experience that seems, paranormal or whatever, and then the CIA swoop in and all of a sudden your life begins to change for the better, I feel like anyone would be happy to go along with that because it's going to improve their quality of life and get them out of the situation they were in. And now all of a sudden you're this important person having these amazing experiences. I don't know. I'm not saying that's the case at all. I think it's just something to keep in mind. But that brings us to the last clip of the show, which is a long one. Okay, so we'll probably pause this one quite a bit and chit chat as we go. This is the original clip of Lou Elizondo and his somber quote, but then also him talking to Kurt Jaimungal a couple of years later and just kind of rehashing it. Okay, so we'll check this clip out and we'll probably stop off and talk about it as we go, and then we'll wrap up the show with some final thoughts.
This first clip went viral on YouTube and is from 2020. If the general public knew or saw what you saw, what would the next week look like?
Wow, this is from 2020. This is from 2020. I remember watching this live. Wow, 5 years ago. This is before the 2027 quote as well.
Like, how would the public react?
Somber. I think there would be this big exhale for about a day. And then this turning inward and trying to reflect on what this means to us and our species and ourselves. I think...
somber, sorry, like a sigh of relief?
Somber meaning serious. Not like Hollywood portrays people partying in the streets and silliness like that. I think you would have some people perhaps turning to religion more so. You might have some people turning away from religion. I think you're going to have, at that point, the philosophical and theological questions will be raised, and people will have some serious soul searching to do, no pun intended. And I don't think that's bad, by the way. I think a lot of folks that have spent their times in this community being charlatans will have been exposed, and they will be probably unemployed and probably have to change their names because, the rest of society will look at them in an unfavorable light.
That's absolutely shots fired at Stephen Greer there, 100%. Heidi Stanley's joined the chat. Welcome, Heidi. Somber's chaos. And what news would cause this reaction? I guess that's what we're going to get into. That's going to be the final thoughts of the show. But I do think the second part of this clip, I do feel like what Lou is talking about in this next part of the clip really makes sense to me. Lou's been paying me to endorse him. Yeah, he has actually. My paycheck was meant to come in yesterday from Lou, and it's still not here. I might have to because I've got his number. I might just call him actually. We talk all the time, and yeah, I'm on his payroll, so I might have to follow him up. Thanks for reminding me about that, by the way.
I think there are some unsung heroes that will probably come to light, and the world will appreciate their contributions to this topic. I think the
Names-
scientific
oh,
community
sorry.
and academic communities. No, I can't give those names.
I know what I was going to say is names that have been announced before when you say the unsung heroes or new
Yeah,
names.
names haven't been announced before. New
Okay.
names. I think the scientific and academic community is going to have to take a real hard look at itself and see why it repeated the same mistakes it did when Galileo first proposed that the Earth was not the center of the solar system.
That's such a good point there, right? That's such a good point there. Why do we make the same mistakes? This is what I find so crazy, right? And I've talked about this. At one point in time, we thought we were the center of the Earth, the universe, sorry. We thought the Earth was the center of the universe and everything revolved around us. And then we found out we didn't. Okay, we found out that we didn't, or we weren't. But for some reason, that didn't then change the paradigm to encourage new ways of thinking. We just continued demonizing people and treating people like heretics who suggest that reality might be maybe a little bit different. Maybe we don't actually have everything right. Like, that is just wild to me that we don't encourage alternative ways of thinking. And that's why I always try to look at things from multiple perspectives, because assuming that my limited perspective, my scope on reality, your scope on reality is like this little window. It depends on whatever you're looking at. To assume that this little perspective that I have is the right one is the most arrogant shit ever, right? And that goes for everybody. Like, if you think just like your own perspective is what the deep truth is of life, I think that's just like pure arrogance, and we are not learning from our mistakes. Lou can't even look into the camera consistently. 6 stars. Somber is such a weird word. Yeah, look, I knew this would be a bit of a contentious clip with people. I know a lot of people feel strongly about him. But for me, I find this clip and the next one that follows on from this to be one of the most interesting because, like I said before in the show, people who maybe work in intelligence, disinformation, which we know Lou did, counterintelligence, I don't know if that's what they're... Look, and this is probably just like maybe wishful or naively optimistic thinking of me to think that I feel like sometimes people's human side, the humanism, shines through, and we maybe get moments of like the truth. Let me know what you guys think on that, and you'll see where I'm getting at with this next clip, because I really do feel like the next clip is in the realm of the truth. That's just my opinion, though. You're weird, Josh. What is this? Okay, what is this? Like, is this yesterday's news? Come on. Come on.
Hubris is a big part of that. And then I think, maybe we start the international conversation, say, okay, we realize that there's some things out there that are probably well beyond our petty discrepancies we have with each other. Maybe we really need to start working together on this. Realize that we are really a global family. Doesn't matter where you're from, or it doesn't matter what your religion is, or culture, or your color, or anything else. We are all brothers and sisters on this tiny little rock called Earth.
All right, here's an experiment for you. All the people in the chat flaming Lou. Okay, again, I'm not defending Lou. I've flamed him many times myself. But what do you think about what he just said there? We're all brothers and sisters. We all need to put our silly conflicts aside. What? Are you still angry at him? Do you disagree with that? No, you agree with that. I hope you agree with that. I really hope you agree with that. And, that's a little exercise. Just because someone says something bad one time or is wrong or lies one time doesn't mean every single thing they say from now on is a lie, is deception. It should still be considered on a case-by-case basis with the information that we know already. And that might be that they've told a lie before, or that they've been involved in something shady before. Always remember that. I'm not saying forget that. It's important to remember that. But listen to what he's saying here. This is what I believe. Like, this is truth. This is what the world needs, what he's saying right here. Josh is the king weirdo. That's right. I'm the leader of the freaks. And that's why... Okay? It's there for a reason. King of the freaks. All right, let's keep going.
This pale blue dot that's hurtling through space.
It may unify us.
Well, I would certainly hope so, unless we allow our poor nature to interfere, and we look at this as opportunities to subjugate each other. I would hope that's not the case.
This second clip gives context to the first and was asked in 2021.
So, what do you guys think about that? I mean, I agree. I'm with you. Lou has done some weird things. He comes across as dishonest at times, especially when he says like, when he gets asked a question and he starts like twisting the conversation, like, oh, let me back up a little bit here. Let me thread the needle on that one. I can't stand that shit. But that doesn't mean that everything he says is inherently false or is a lie or is disinformation. I think we should always consider on a case-by-case basis, always. This next clip is great, and I think this next clip, to me, brings us to where I think this whole 2027 thing is going. Part truth, part lies, always know as this is the case. That's right. We know disinformation works by mixing in lies with truth. He's parroting, his words are hollow. The hat is dope. Thanks, Mark. You're authentic, Josh, 100%. Thank you. Don't cry, Josh. We need strength up in here. I'm sorry, man. I get emotional when people flame Lou. I just think my paycheck might not come in, and I just get upset, man.
Last time we spoke, there were two comments that you said that stood out to me. Well, one was the somber heard around the world, in a sense, and then you clarified that, or you added to that by saying sobering. Oh, I was wondering. We can get to that. And then also you mentioned that the charlatans of the world will be shown to be charlatans. And I, again, don't know much about this UFO community, but people in the comments were saying, did he mean Stephen Greer? So why don't you comment on that?
He definitely did.
Ooh.
You can be as diplomatic as you like. I know that you're a relatively diplomatic person.
Yeah, let me.
Does he pay well? Well, I'm still running with one monitor, so I think that tells you.
Let me start with by somber or sobering. Imagine everything you've been taught.
This is deep.
Whether it's through Sunday school or through regular formal education in school, or what our political leaders have told us, and yes, even maybe our mothers and fathers around the dinner table have told us, or maybe at bedtime, about who we are, right? And our background and our past. What if all of that turned out to be not entirely accurate? In fact, the very history of our species, the meaning, what it means to be a human being and our place in this universe. What if all that is now in question? What if it turns out that a lot of the things that a
lot of people are saying he's reading from a script. It's interesting. He does look down a lot. And it's also interesting that people automatically think that reading from a script means it's sus, right? Because it doesn't. It means he could have wanted to prepare a thoughtful answer, maybe get a message out, which I think, I don't know if he is reading from a script, by the way. He is definitely looking down a lot. But he may be wanting to get a message out. I mean, that's why he does the podcast circuits, I guess. He's been on Kurt Jarmungel's podcast a lot. Again, I'm not defending him. I'm just encouraging an alternative way to look at it. Because, yes, he may be reading from a script, but again, what I think he's saying here is potentially in the realm of where things are going.
Thought were one way.
Back up a little bit.
Entirely accurate. In fact, the very history of our species, the meaning, what it means to be a human being and our place in this universe. What if all that is now in question? What if it turns out that a lot of the things that we thought were one way aren't? Are we prepared to have that honest question with ourselves? Are we prepared to recognize that we're not at the top of the food chain, potentially? That we're not the alpha predator, that we are maybe somewhere in the middle? It's interesting because I was having a discussion with a friend not too long ago. A really, we call them graybeards in the government. Really, really smart guy. I'm not going to mention his name, but I was talking to him probably a couple months ago. And this is a guy who was always paid to solve the hard problems for the U.S. government. Cold War. How do we solve that, right? How do we do these big things? How do we go in and beat the Russians at their own game? So this guy I respect tremendously. And
all right, just going to pause it there for a second, catch up on a couple of chats. I had a $2 come in from Toxic Fart. This is to make up for Lou's missing check. Josh, mate, that's 2 months of paychecks from Lou that you've just covered. So I do really appreciate that. And, hopefully he'll pay up soon because he is well overdue. What have we missed here? You think, know thyself, he's prepared, and it's easy to forget to say something important and has an authentic vibe if you ask me. That's exactly how I feel about this. Again, I know that might trigger some people into thinking that I'm saying Lou is totally honest. I'm not saying that. But I think what we're getting here is more in the realm of truth than not. And I do think that he probably is reading from a script. And I think it is likely that he wanted to prepare this because it is very deep and impactful what he's saying, and he maybe wanted to get it right. What do you guys think about that? That's just what I'm thinking. There's a heavy narrative to hate on Lou, and that's what makes me sus. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a great point, Heidi, actually. Who fed Lou that picture? Now, again, yes, obviously he should vet it himself. He's irresponsible. The chandelier, he should be vetting these things before showing them 100%. But who's giving them to him? Who has access to Lou Elizondo that is someone that he would actually receive the picture from and show it? Right? Because, if you or I just went up to him and said, look, a cornfield. No, sorry. Look, a UFO. He's not going to be like, oh, sweet, I'll show that one the next time I go live to millions of people. He's probably going to be like, oh, thanks. I'll just put that in the bin on my way home. But whoever gave him this, to him, was obviously someone that he trusted enough. And yet, look what it did to him. It 100% feels like, I feel like it's far more likely that someone is giving him these things from places that he thought he could trust. But it's those agencies that seem to be sort of littered throughout Congress and the intelligence that are kind of agents working to keep this thing hushed. Like Sean Kirkpatrick, for example. He's the most obvious public one that we have. But there's probably heaps of them.
And we had a conversation. He said, Lou, mankind's been around for a little while. And for most of that time, mankind's been around. We've been smack in the middle of the food chain. We've been, we ate a lot of things. A lot of things ate us. And that's just the bottom line. And about 70,000 years ago, something fundamentally changed. Something changed. And our species was instantly catapulted to the very top of our planet as far as predatory animals. And now all of a sudden, we became the most feared. We were the most lethal and the most successful. And in fact, most of the large species that existed on this planet went extinct because of us. Believe it or not, because we started eating all of it. There were a couple species that did very, very well with our ascension, our immediate ascension. And we brought a couple species with us. The dog is an example, where the dog species benefited greatly with mankind's ascension as the alpha predator and wound up succeeding as well, doing very well off of that. That changed the entire global landscape of our planet almost overnight. Large animals went extinct because of us. What if it turns out that there's another species that is even higher on that ladder than we are. Do we need the social institutions that we have today? Will we need governmental and religious organizations that we have today if it turns out that there is something else or someone else that is technologically more advanced and perhaps from an evolutionary perspective more advanced? Have we been wasting our time all this time? Or are we doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing? Are we, does it turn out that mankind is in fact just another animal in the zoo? Or because we thought ourselves as a zookeeper before, but maybe we're just another exhibit inside the zoo.
I'm on board with zoo theory. I think it's something like that. But okay, this is the thing. Okay, there were elements. This clip has sort of detracted from the whole 2027 theme of the show today, but I still think it's obviously quite relevant and important. But I also would say that I think, when it comes to 2027, but also, non-human intelligence interacting with humanity, interdimensional, these kind of things that all get wrapped under the phenomenon. I think it's a bit confusing and maybe even misleading because this phenomenon is multifaceted. And I think, what Lou might be talking about here, a superior intelligence that's been existing alongside us, may not even necessarily be anything to do with interdimensional beings. They could be two completely separate things. I mean, like Bob Dean said earlier, the Bob Dean clip, he said when he was looking at that shape headquarters study, which I believe was like early 60s, mid 60s, Bob Dean retired in 76. Okay, so all this stuff that he knows, his cosmic top secret NATO clearance was in the 60s. And it was then that they had concluded from a study. The conclusion was that there are 4 species here interacting with us, one of which looks exactly like us, and that they are interstellar, interplanetary, and likely multidimensional as well. That was what this shape headquarters study concluded in the 60s. Possibly even, I think the actual study's from earlier, but this is when Bob Dean was looking at it. So I think that's important to note that this is likely very multifaceted. And like I said earlier, it seems like people in the government are potentially wanting to bring about an end, an apocalypse style scenario. Is this, did a 3-body problem thing happen? This non-human species and intelligence came here and has been interacting with us, manipulating us, not sticking to their agreements, perhaps, like Phil Schneider said. And now things have kind of gone off the rails, but they're technologically superior. So we're feeling a bit stuck in a hard place, backed into a corner. What do we do? What have we done? What have we done to society by doing this? And maybe this disclosure process is trying to bring about some kind of scenario that, like I said, is the Hail Mary, the mid-court buzzer beater shot to try and do something wild and drastic to flip the situation that we are in. This situation of conflict, fear, the fact that humans just can't seem to get along with each other. Like, what is that? I mean, we all seem to get along for the most part. Had a couple of people in the chat earlier that I had to give the boot, but you're always going to get a few. That's what we call living NPCs. These are the people who aren't awake, who see bots online talking and just buy into it like it's reality because they can't think for themselves. Josh, the only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything, but don't trust most of what this guy is pushing. Yeah, no, 100%. And that's why you always got to stay, a little bit impartial until you really have the full story. 100%. You got to, I like to rate things with like a probability level of like, how likely is that? And even when something is like 80, 90%, I'm not going to say it's the truth, because if there's always going to be a 1%. There's always going to be a 1%. That's why I say there's a possibility that the MH370 videos are hoaxed, because there's always a 1%. but I think in that case we're talking 0.0000001 cent. All right, one last clip for Lou Elizondo before we wrap this up, because what he says here is very interesting. Okay, this to me is talking about disclosure and why perhaps what could have triggered the level of secrecy that we have seen with disclosure. Why do people who have been pro-disclosure, who have found out the truth, have flipped? People who have been, we must disclose, we deserve to know, we can handle the truth, we deserve to know. These people find out and immediately they're like, we can't say that. It is far better us just not telling anyone about that. Like, what could that be? Let's check out this clip. It might come in loud. I apologize if it does. I'll fix it quickly.
Ultimately, hypothetically, imagine a scenario where maybe we had 50 years to prepare for something, but now that the cat's out of the bag, that existential action will happen tomorrow. And by the way, we're not ready for it. We're not prepared for it. We don't have a countermeasure. We don't have a capability to counter this. And so from a very real perspective, a national security perspective, the mere fact that you are acknowledging the existence of something may predicate an action or an act that you're not prepared to have right now. And so I encourage you and your listeners to just for a moment, I'm not asking you to be a national security person, but I'm asking you to suspend your personal beliefs right now for just a moment and put yourself in somebody else's shoes who does feel that way, right? Now, what do? If the mere fact of talking about this could potentially cause a reaction that you're not ready for as a country, as a civilization, right? Maybe that's the reason why you decide to only brief certain presidents who have a background in intelligence. Maybe they were former directors of CIA, but the other presidents who are career politicians will be, they're here today, gone in 4 years. Maybe you can't even risk telling them. And so maybe the reason why this has been kept secret so long is actually, in a weird sense, some sort of sense of patriotism by people. And maybe that's how they justify it. And I'll leave that at that as a counterpoint of forcing people to think maybe a little bit non-traditionally. Now,
so that clip is very interesting to me because, like I said, he says there, what if we've had about 50 years to prepare for something? Okay, so this takes us back to, around the 60s, 70s, around that era, post-Roswell, when Bob Dean was reading his SHAPE headquarters report on that there are 4 species here interacting with us. Some of them look just like us, and they may have infiltrated the military and the government. Okay, so this non-human intelligence may have infiltrated the military and government. The military and the government seems to be the place where, at the same time, there are people coming out trying to say, hey, this thing is happening right now, but then other parts of the military and government are denying it and not letting it come out, right? So Lou is saying there that we've had about 50 years to prepare for something, okay? So maybe once that SHAPE headquarters report came out and they realized that they'd been infiltrated, a plan was developed, right? They probably had to get, technology had to improve. They had to develop maybe a defense, weapons, but it has to be done in secret. Right? It has to be done in secret because the very forces that you're maybe preparing to deal with could be right next to you, could be sitting right next to you, like Rob Dean says. And like Lou says in that clip, the very action of disclosure, making this knowledge public on what the truth actually is about what is going on in the world, why things are the way that they are, why the secrecy has been so tight, why the government has felt like it's a better decision to gaslight people and make them look like a fool and humiliate them in public. That is a better outcome than anybody knowing the truth. And that could be because the action of the truth getting out, like Lou said, will predicate an action that we are not ready for. And he talks about how, when you are preparing to attack an enemy, like a surprise attack perhaps, or you're preparing to do something, if you realize that the enemy realizes you're there and that you're scoping them out, well, now they might strike first. That might start something that we, who have been preparing for 50 years, like he says there, are not quite there yet. We're not quite ready just yet. And if I had to give you guys a wrap up and a guess on where I think this might be going, that's where it is. That's where I think it is. And I mean, it makes sense why, you know, weapons are the most heavily invested industry in the whole world. Weapons. What are you freaking out about? Okay? Weapons are the most invested thing in the whole world. Just think about that in itself. Why would you do that? I mean, I understand having weapons in a military is important, but it's the most important thing. Whoa. Sorry. It's the most important thing. What does that mean? Why are we doing that? Do we just love guns and weapons? Or are we maybe preparing for something? I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments, guys. If you have enjoyed this live stream, please give the video a like. Share it around as well. I feel like we covered a lot of ground in this one. It was a lot of fun. Hopefully it didn't scare you. Hopefully it didn't freak you guys out. You know, none of this may happen. This could all just be disinformation to scare you. Keep that in mind as well. Until next time, guys, join the Discord. You can join the conversation there. You can become a member, $5 a month, or buy me a coffee if you want to support me further. But until then, guys, take care. Get outside, touch grass. See you next time.
Going to say, what the hell is going on?
No matter how far you go into the dark, when you flip, you go exactly the same place to the light in our galaxy. Everything. Because everything is in balance. Everything is a polarity.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is.